Welcome, everybody, to this week's latest installment of REtalk. I am Ted Bangs.
And I'm Matt Wilkerson. We're glad to be here.
Now, today we have sort of a macro topic for you, and that is Airbnb.
This one's great because everybody has an experience, I think, with Airbnb, good or bad, indifferent.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think anyone can disagree with the fact that Airbnb has done something pretty awesome. It's put some downward pricing on hotels.
That's right.
Gives them some competition. And as we see as real estate professionals in Dallas, we see sellers that are moving towards the trend of having a back house.
Sure.
Or a guest quarters.
And the hotel industry as a whole, like it's got big hotel, sort of traditional hotel providers, looking at ways to have an experience, more of an experience type based program, similar to what people get out of Airbnb, because it's really changed what our expectations of staying in a city.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sort of allows you to live in someone else's shoes.
That's right.
For a day or two.
It really feels like it. And, and everyone I know, I mean, whether it's my mother-in-law and her friends in New York staying in a brownstone out in Hell's Kitchen, or, my partner and I, in Santa Fe with a little adobe, it's fun to live the life. Absolutely. But Ted, I mean, some of our talks lately, we've got some really interesting things that have been going on. First of all, let's talk about these party houses.
I mean, there's a story as of late.
We'll tell everybody what a party house is.
Okay, well, Airbnb has, quote, party houses that it rents alongside other regular rentals. But these party houses are a little bit, they play towards an economy of scale. They're big houses, they're little McMansions.
That's right.
And people rent them for a day, maybe 2 days, for anything from bachelor party weekend to prom weekend or anything in between.
We bought a keg on Friday and it's going to be floated by Saturday. A lot of them, the way you recognize them is it says, sleeps 17, sleeps 25. That's kind of how you recognize it. But my gosh, there's some crazy stuff that's been going on. I mean, first of all, they've had a little onslaught of murders happening. Big one happened out in California that has them really addressing the whole thing. And locally, there was a high school student out in Plano killed a couple of weeks ago with somebody that wasn't invited to the party and was real upset about it. So,
but Airbnb has taken notice. They've eliminated the party houses already, they should have. They needed to. But they're also starting a response team that's supposed to be able to, they're on call, they're able to check out some issues, incidents, and verify housing.
I know. But, every time we talk about this, like there was a girl who wrote an article for Vice that came out this last month. And, hers was all about the fraud on Airbnb. So basically, long story short, like she and some buddies, girlfriends went to Chicago. They were almost to the house they were going to rent. And just before they got there, they got a call from the landlord, who was supposedly someone named Andrew. Becky and Andrew had rented them the house, supposedly. Said, oh, no, it had plumbing problems. They couldn't stay there. But, they had a better property. It was just a little more expensive and it was much bigger and nicer. But they get to the other property and it's basically like one of these like sleeps 15 people, but it's kind of like a flop house. No furniture, no dishes, no towels. And was more expensive. So, and at that point they were kind of trapped. They didn't have anywhere else to go. They'd spent their money on Airbnb, so they didn't have the money to go get a hotel. When this was all over, this girl dug in. She was a journalist, and she found it was happening all over the U.S. And this Becky and Andrew were really not Becky and Andrew. It was really more like some sort of mafia type situation. And they had over 50 properties they were doing this with. So when we talk about, what this girl discovered was that Airbnb really sees themselves as a facilitator. It's like a dating site. They're bringing you together, and everything else is up to you and the person that you have the business transaction with. And it's millions and millions, and they hope to by the end of 2020 to have addressed all of the fraudulent properties that are listed on Airbnb, but they have no plan that they've rolled out that they've told us about on how they're going to do that. So it's really concerning. I have to say, when we went to rent our Airbnb for Christmas, I definitely thought about it, and I was looking to see like what other properties they have and who are they.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's clearly some pitfalls with the Airbnb system, but at the same time, there's plenty of benefit. I know a lot of sellers that pay off half their mortgage, if not their whole mortgage, by having a separate guest quarters or a separate area that they can rent out, divided in the house. But
and real estate agents, they love buying these little condos and things that just for business travelers. I mean, there's lots of people I know that are doing real well with an Airbnb, and they're great. Like they are great hosts, right? Yeah. I mean, I'd stay in some of their units. They're so cute. They go to IKEA, they fix them all up. They're really good looking little places in great parts of town, that you wouldn't normally see if you were in a hotel. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to discuss here. Yeah.
But I think we could push it on to some other real estate professionals like ourselves that might have a few more perspectives to add. So without further ado, we'll pass it on to our discussion and see what they have to say.
And that we just need to be more aware of what we're renting and who we're renting from, and maybe do a little bit more digging than we've been doing previously.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's the self research, not just taking it for face value. And then in response, Airbnb did make some changes. I do think it was surprising, and Brian and Bess, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. One of the things that really became noticeable was that I'd always been under the impression, like, I thought Airbnb sort of vetted their community. And as it turns out, they don't vet it at all. Like, they rely on the consumers to vet out any fake reviews and through that course of action. So it really is buyer beware. Thoughts on that from you guys?
Yeah, I found that concerning, and I had always been under the impression that there was some level of vetting for both the users and the host, and I think there should be, frankly. How Airbnb and other sites like it manage that process, I think, is above my pay grade. But I would think at a bare minimum, there should be some kind of criminal background search, if not a full check. It's easy enough to Google someone's name, assuming that they're using their true name, and see if there is any public record of arrest record. Excuse me. And then, I think it's a mutual policing thing. I think if you're a good host, you're doing your research to make sure that the guest is not a serial killer, if you can. And if you're a good guest, you're doing the same thing, and you're making sure that other people have stayed there, and that they have had a positive experience. I will say personally that the only time I've ever done it where I felt I was the first person ever to stay there was in a very remote village on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And I really had one other lodging choice, and it looked terrible, and it was the local inn, and it was very expensive and all but full. And so I thought, well, you only live once. So, I think you have to use judgment. And I think had I been a businesswoman traveling by myself, I probably wouldn't have made that choice. But I'm a big guy, and, I think the parallel to Truro is interesting. I'm familiar with Truro. I've never used it, but I have friends who've used it, and it is very comfortable, but for the car world. And the difference to me with Truro is you're getting into a vehicle that may or may not have been maintained. You may not have properly working brake pads. It's just a whole different scenario in my mind than a structure where if you notice a problem, you walk down, you leave. So I think there's some real safety concerns to auto rental and maintenance that don't necessarily apply to a building.
Well, and the other thing I think that I took away too, to your point, Brian, is a lot of these people that were scammed, it happened to the very last second before they arrived at the Airbnb. And they all sort of jumped into, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm just going to accept the next offer that they make me on the more expensive place, right? And I think it made me, it put something in me that says, okay, if I were on my way to an Airbnb now and I get a call from the owner saying that it's no longer available, they have another spot for me, I'm going to be very, very cautious to that, right? Now, the first thing in my head is going to be like, oh, I'm being scammed. I would immediately say, this smells like a scam. You're trying to scam me now. And I would probably go look for a hotel versus trying to do another deal with them.
I think one of the other important things when you're traveling is to use a really solid credit card. Never use a debit card. You have almost no recourse, and then they have access to your bank account. Use a credit card and make sure it's a credit card that will back you up if you have a problem with the charge.
That's right. Like American Express, for instance. You tell
Absolutely.
them, go right, and they're gonna.
Well, going back to your point, Matt, about the last minute cancellation, the last minute cancellation by a host of Airbnb. Reviews, we really are a review economy these days, right? So a review does have value, right? So Airbnb, it's self-policing in that regard, right? Because you as a leasee, it's reviewed as well as the landlord / Airbnb host. And I say landlord tenant because that's really what it is a short-term landlord tenant relationship. Very much like Brian's thought on some sort of background check. In Texas, a background check is mandated for everyone over 18 that occupies a leased property. And these are short-term leases. It seems like the natural common sense requirement to have a background check of the landlord / Airbnb host, as well as the prospective tenant overnight guest. That being said, yeah, there's a bit of a wild west when it comes to Airbnb. I mean,
I think you make a great point.
attraction of Airbnb
That's a great point.
is clearly ties in with the adventurous spirit of someone like Brian, himself, y'all, right? I mean, I could go to the Isle of Skye and I could go to Paris and I could spend $500 a night and I know exactly what I'm getting at Hilton because I go to every Hilton around the world and I always know. But that doesn't appeal to me. That's not my style of travel. I like a little bit of unpredictability and I'm good with that. And so just like in the real world of real estate, location and condition determines price, a bit of unpredictability when it comes to Airbnb. That's why often you get a better deal with that than you do with I know that my Hampton Inn bed is going to be one of the most comfortable beds in the universe, whether it's in Shanghai, China, or Thailand, or the Philippines, or Paris. And be the same.
Yeah. Now, we made some great points here, but I'm going to have to cut you all off because we're running out of time. But thank you, Bess and Brian, for joining us. We'll have you on soon.
Well, obviously, we all like the benefit of Airbnb, which is being out, living the lifestyle of the city.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, there's some great talk about everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
Lots of opinions, and so there's some great fellowship on that subject.
But hey, if you like what you saw today and you'd like to hear more from us, please like and subscribe down at the bottom. We would really appreciate it.
And leave us your comments. If you have ideas or experiences on Airbnb, good, bad, or crazy, please let us know. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. See you next time.
Bye, guys.